It's time. It is time for me to do this video. Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and welcome back to my channel Stubbornly Bookish. Today I'm finally going to be reviewing and discussing Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. When I say that this video is a long time coming, I'm not kidding at all. So to bring you to speed with Here and Now, I initially read this in November of last year. I was really looking forward to reading it. However, I was incredibly nervous because Laini Taylor and her Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy is one of my favorite things that I've read. And I just was really nervous that I was going to hate it. So I put it off and put it off and put it off. And then read it in November and loved it. It was my favorite book of the year. And then a few months later I realized I still hadn't done it. And I was like, I kind of forget a lot of the things that happened. So I decided in March, I believe, that I was going to reread it. I let my audiobook expire, so I had to put it on hold again. And then I finally was able to reread it in, I believe, June. But anyway, we're here. It's happening, thank God. I'm running out of time because Muse of Nightmares is coming out in like less than a week now, so it's high time that I get to this review and I hope it doesn't suck. And I've now built up so many expectations that I'm terrified that I'm gonna suck at this, but it was my favorite book of last year and now I'm going to tell you why. I'm preemptively just going to stick Strange over there because it's a big book, it's very heavy, and my arm was already falling off just in my intro. So the way I think that this review is going to go is I'm going to have both a spoiler-free and a spoiler-filled section. I personally am of the belief that this book is best going into knowing as little as possible and just being surprised. But if you do want to know a little bit about it, stick around for my spoiler-free section. I'll let you know before I get to spoilers. So Strange the Dreamer is this high fantasy novel following our main character Laszlo, who he spends his young adolescent life trying to learn and discover as much as he can about this city that he believes is real. Things kind of happen from there. I don't want to give you any more. It's just such an enchanting story, and frankly, a summary will never really truly do it justice. Even if you read what it says here, it's very vague, and I think truly that it is best knowing as little as you can about the plot. So in terms of the world building, I think Laini Taylor is frankly pretty genius. She created not only this high fantasy world, but also kind of cities and countries with their own customs and cultures and languages, and it's just so thorough and just so well done. She really takes her time filling in the gaps and letting us know what's going on. We just get thrown into it and are kind of forced to discover how the world works through the eyes of our main character, and she just does a fantastic job. She really balances being told certain aspects about our world and our cultures, but then also giving you hints and details just throughout the text, and it is really layered and very, very complex. I believe this goes hand in hand with how great of a writer she is, so I will expand on that further when I talk about her writing, but she's one of the best writers I've ever read, and because of that, her attention to detail and her world building really shines through. Now, in terms of the characters, I again think that this is a point that she does super well. I'm not going to discuss them specifically right here in my spoiler-free spot, but it's a character-driven story, and she really takes her time with the plot and lets us get to know our characters, especially our title one, and I love some of these characters. She brings a very vast and varied group of perspectives, and I would argue that she makes each and every single one of her characters sympathetic, and even if you hate them or hate the way they are, you understand where they're coming from, what their motives are, and it's like clear as day. I thought that her characters and the way that they were formed made this story incredibly complex. And before I forget, there's also a small side female-female relationship that's really sweet, and I hope we see more. Now, in terms of plot, it was something that I incredibly enjoyed, even though there wasn't a crazy amount of it. Like I said before, it's very character-driven and based on what the characters are trying to accomplish, but the plot is very intriguing. I really liked how we had an initial problem, and then this problem kind of spurred on so many other things, and it was just different from what you would think of with a high fantasy. A lot of high fantasies we get are a lot of like kingdoms feuding and political intrigue, and although there is a touch of that, it's not really the focus at all. I'm finding it incredibly difficult to be vague with this spoiler-free section, but I have to be vague because I don't want to spoil anything. This is difficult. A large portion of this does focus on the romance, which is something that I don't normally tend to love, but in this instance, and you'll learn why more in the spoiler-filled section, I did enjoy a lot of the romance. There was a couple things I didn't love about it, and I do think there were very slight pacing issues occasionally, and that's kind of because of her writing style, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. In terms of her writing, I think this probably is my favorite aspect of the novel. Her writing is just so descriptive and lush and lyrical and just lovely, but it's not all of those things just for the sake of being so. She doesn't write words and beautiful phrases for the sake of writing them. They truly have meaning and depth behind them, and you can understand what she's saying. That's one of the things that I think she just does best and is so talented at. She doesn't write for the sake of writing or for the sake of sounding pretty. There's meaning behind them. I think I can definitively say that she is truly my favorite writer in terms of her prose. There's no one like her that I've ever read before. There were times that when reading the book for the first time, I was genuinely stopped in my tracks to just think of the phrase and how perfectly it worked for what she was describing. And I would just kind of sit there stunned for a minute going, oh my God. First of all, like, beautiful, and then also like, that's exactly how it should be. It's just fantastic. I do think, however, her writing can create the slightest bit of pacing issues, just the way that certain scenes are described. They're a little bit long and drawn out, and they should have ended a bit quicker, specifically with the romance. But again, I'm not a huge romance reader, so that also could be why I didn't love how long some of those scenes were drawn out. I think that is now it for the most part of my spoiler-free thoughts. I think I said something along the lines in my first wrap-up that everyone should read this book, and I don't think that now at all. I was just consumed with my love for it that I didn't realize that this is not going to be a book for everyone. It is a little niche in the fact that it is incredibly complex in terms of the high fantasy, but also very much focused on the romance, and I know that's not going to be for everyone. If you like beautiful writing and a mix of great high fantasy, but also there is romance, I think you'll love this book. If you don't like one of those aspects, do give it a try, but know that that is a large part of the story. If you haven't read it yet and this is where you leave, goodbye for now. If you do read it, come back and let's discuss the more spoilery aspects. I would love to do that, but I think now we're gonna have to say goodbye and it's officially spoiler time. I'm going to try to keep this bit as succinct and as linear as possible, but it's very likely that I'm just going to jump back and forth from place to place, and we're just going to have to see how it worked. First 50 pages of this story, I'm not gonna lie to you, I did struggle a little bit. It had been nearly a year and a half since I had read anything by Laini Taylor at this point, and her writing, I think, can be a little difficult to first stomach, especially when she's also describing a high fantasy world that you know nothing about. And I'm not gonna lie to you, the first 50 pages, I was terrified that I was going to hate it because I just didn't know what was going on, and I was just rusty when it came to Laini Taylor's writing. I think it was just about page 50, and I was talking about this book to my mom, and I was like, never mind, my worries are gone. I love it. When Laszlo is this little boy growing up, and he has such a hard life, and he just wants to be a little creative, studious boy, and these monks hate him and are punishing him, and everything just seems to be going wrong. My little heart just broke already off the bat, which is ridiculous knowing what happens later. And when he is discovering as much as he can about wheat and his books are taken, and then when, oh shoot, I'm forgetting their name, but Errol Fane and his group of warriors, the Tizerkane, there we go, Tizerkane, and when the Tizerkane almost leave without him, my heart was breaking, and it was just, oh, it was brutal, and we were only at the very beginning. Before I get further into my spoilery thoughts, let me just say that I love Laszlo Strange with all of my being. He quite possibly may be my favorite male character ever. He's just so, oh, he's so good. I love myself morally great characters, and they're usually my favorite, and this book is chock full of them. I would say everyone is morally gray except for Laszlo, and he's this little beacon of shining hope, and he just wants everything and everyone to be okay, and it's so difficult, and I just love that he was just so good. He was just such a sweet little bean that is way in over his head, and I love him to pieces. So when I first discovered that the whole point, or kind of beginning point, of Strange the Dreamer is the fact that there's this blue angel in the sky, I can't actually totally remember what I first thought. I think I was just blown away by its uniqueness and how, like, it is such a huge problem. There's this floating blue hunk of metal that is a permanent reminder of how terrible the gods were. I just, ooh, it was so fascinating. And of course, there's a lot more and problems that spur from that, but I just, whose brain thinks of that? Like, Laini Taylor, wow, who just thinks of that? Now, when we meet the God Spawn, when we meet our little blue friends, I think I was initially incredibly taken aback. I think when we first get Sarai's perspective, we're probably around 200 pages in at that point, and I thought it was just a book about Laszlo, and boy was I wrong. I loved the perspective and everything that was brought to the table because of these young little creatures who are basically trying to survive as long as they can and don't even expect really to live much longer. It was incredibly heartbreaking and twisted, and ooh, it was really good. I really liked that. And at first, I don't think I was entirely sold on Sarai's perspective just because I really loved Laszlo. And she was very different, but I came and grew very much to love her and just appreciate her, and especially with the position that she's in. The fact that she has to do such terrible things for her own and her family's survival, and the fact that she's so torn up about it, was a conflict, an internal conflict that I love so much. A lot of people might question me when I say that Minya's sympathetic and that I can sympathize and see where she's coming from, but as much as I hate her and I just want her gone, like, you have to understand where she's coming from and her reasoning behind wanting everyone dead. They killed babies, and she was there to witness it all at a very young age, and it would just twist and warp your mind. And as evil and cruel, and as much as I hate her, I equally sympathize and understand where she's coming from, and I'm terrified of what she's going to do with our characters. Ooh, when it came to the romance and Laszlo and Sarai first meeting, I was sucked in almost immediately. I do agree that realistically and logically, them falling in love as fast as they did is unrealistic and doesn't truly work, because they were both orphaned and so alone, and nobody understands who they are and what they've gone through. And for Sarai, just being seen, I totally understand how these broken little orphans fell in love, and I loved it. All of the dreamscapes and them just imagining within the dreams were so creative, and the imagery was fantastic, and I just loved them. I do think that sometimes those dream scenes could be a little bit long, but we'll live. It's fine. Whatever. Side note, Errol Fane, I thought was again another incredibly complex and great character. He is textbook morally gray that exists side by side and does it all the time. Most notably with Errol Fane, and like, he's a good person. He murdered children. He did it to save his people and his wife. He murdered children, and I love that. And there was a lot of instances that came up like that, and I just thought it was so great and complex and fantastic. While I'm talking about another character, I'll also talk about Theon Nero. I thought he was very interesting as a character as well. At the beginning, super hated him. He's this pretentious, pompous, privileged little brat, and is like that throughout a lot of the story, but he also is kind of a victim of circumstance, and I'm very, very interested to see where his character goes in the future. Alrighty, I think I'm gonna now try and talk about the finale. Also, side note, I feel like I'm missing so much substance of this book, but I don't want to be here for forever, and I don't want to keep you for forever. So if there's anything that I'm not mentioning that you want to discuss, let me know. Please, let's discuss it, please. I swear Laini Taylor wants me dead. I swear it. Because throughout the entire book, I never caught on to the fact, or even suspected, that Sarai would be the one to die. Like, oh my god. Through the first half of the book, I kept thinking about this. Oh my god, like, who's gonna die? Who's gonna die? Who's it gonna be? And there's a point in time where Minya and Sarai are arguing so much that I was convinced that it was going to be Minya that was like thrown off, falls on the spire, and I was convinced that was going to happen. About halfway through, maybe a bit more, I kind of forgot about the prologue. I still can't get over the fact that she's dead and is a ghost, is now going to be controlled by Minya. How twisted and disgusting and awful that is, and how her and Laszlo never even got to be together, like physically, just in the same space. Hurts my soul. Also, going to be perfectly honest, and with the revelation of Laszlo being Scathas's son, wasn't a huge fan of that. To be honest, in my heart, I was hoping that, / not even considering the fact that he was going to be Godspawn. I didn't want him to be a special. I wanted him to be this human that was doing his best to save the woman he loved with these evil, crazy monsters, and I just wanted him to be normal and human. But he's not, so we'll have to live with that. And also, I felt really dumb for not picking up on that, because there's so much foreshadowing that he is going to be even just Scathas's son. There's all of the foreshadowing. I felt so dumb. I love this book, and I feel like I'm missing so very much, and I'm terrified for the future and what's going to happen next. I had a couple of crackpot theories that I was toying with, and I wanted to do a crackpot theories video, but I ran out of time. But at least I can kind of discuss them here. One of my biggest theories for Muse is the fact that I think it's so very heavily hinted to, is that the older gods or the seraphim, whatever they're called, are going to come back. My biggest, most developed theory is about the wraith, the bird that is constantly mentioned as watching over both Sarai and Laszlo. My second reread, I noticed there were so many instances about a feather and the bird gave them food, and I think that either the bird is going to help save them in the final hours, or the bird is also a way that the gods, the seraphim, watch over and will be influenced to help. I think, possibly, maybe. I also think that Thyoniro might become a good guy and become Laszlo's friend and something somewhat to comfort him. Maybe. I would like a lot to see that transition. I also think possibly that the wraith itself is the being that moved Laszlo and was moved to save Laszlo when all the babies were being murdered. Possibly. A lot of my theories have to do with the bird, and was kind of confirmed when I first took a look at the cover for Muse of Nightmares, the UK edition. Look at it. That's the bird. That is the wraith. If it's not, I'm gonna feel so dumb. I also have this theory that Laszlo might actually end up letting Sarai go and not letting Minya control him. And Laszlo is the reason that Sarai fades and evaporates, eviscerates, whatever it is. It'd be incredibly depressing and heartbreaking, but I think Laini Taylor would do it to me just because I think she wants to kill me. But I think that Laszlo is so upstanding and good that I don't think he would let Minya control him for that long, and he might be the reason that Sarai is gone. So if you've stuck with me for this whole video, I would like to say thank you so very much. I have so much more to say about Strange the Dreamer, but we've got to wrap this video up somehow. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and I would love to discuss all the spoilery goodness down in the comments, but please be mindful of spoilers and mention that in the comments, so if people are reading them, they don't in turn get spoiled. I love this book with all my soul, even if I did have the teeniest little problems with it. It's fantastic. I love it. I'm sure you do as well if you stuck with me for this long of the video. But what do you think is going to happen in Muse? We don't have that much time left, so let me know some of your theories down below. And yeah, we're getting down to the wire. I'm getting really nervous for it. Oh my god. Thank you so much for watching. I can imagine this video was super long, so thanks for sticking with it. But yeah, I will see you again very soon. Bye.